The 5711 sucks. That is my opinion. Now, what does sucks mean? What is up, Watch Fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Vintage Watch Shop, and today I'm talking about a couple of thoughts that I had about the watch industry looking back over the last 10 years, from quartz watches to the Patek 5711 to TikTok and the Apple Watch. These are, four subjects that I think if you were to go back 10 years ago, you wouldn't have even thought would be, I think, decade-defining subjects in the watch space, and I think they have been. So I want to take some time today and discuss them. I'll start off with this quartz watch discussion. This is actually something that I was talking about on TikTok last week. If you have a TikTok, you want to go follow, please go ahead, check out watch content. I post my clothing and my watches over there, so go take a look. But I wanted to talk for a second about what I think is, a bad reputation that quartz watches have received. Okay, in the kind of revenge that the mechanical watch industry has paid to the quartz watch industry, right? The revenge for the quartz crisis, when the quartz, watch industry essentially dethroned mechanical watches and led to mass unemployment and a collapse of, mechanical infrastructure and all that stuff. This revenge has not been very fair either, right? This sort of like revisionist history where mechanical watches are the best hero ever and quartz watches are all bad is not really fair. First of all, there are plenty of really mediocre mechanical watches. That's just true. Really just basic, undecorated, uninventive movements that are sold as luxury. And yet, you can buy them for, brands buy them for dozens of dollars, $100 sometimes. It's really crazy. I just don't like that. I don't like the kind of like, pretending as if we're like this big luxury product. And yet, if anyone takes a look under the hood, it's really nothing to write home about. I think that's really dishonest and kind of evil. I think it's kind of like fraud, and I don't really like that. But it's easy to do, and it's been done. It's been done by Panerai, it's been done by Cartier, it's been done by a lot of brands. Okay, so I don't really love that. And on the quartz side, yeah, there are a lot of quartz watches that don't interest me. That's obviously true. But there's a whole world of collectible quartz watches, particularly in the vintage world, that are really, really fabulous. From Piaget's Polo to Concords to Pateks to, of course, Rolexes, right? The Oyster Quartz, which is the design inspiration for the new Land Dweller. There's a whole world of really beautiful, interesting quartz watches out there. And people, like the commonly held knowledge is just that doesn't exist. And I don't really like that. I have my own problems with quartz watches. They can be somewhat unreliable because if they do break, a lot of the time, due to a lack of accessibility to parts, you got to replace the whole movements, and that's really difficult. So I'm going to be honest. But there are some gems in the world of quartz. Some gems that not only excel in quality of production and just build quality, but also in design. And I just want to have a more fair and honest conversation about that. And this has really happened quite a bit, particularly in the last 10 years, as again, social media has just flooded all these people into the watch world. People that, the watch world has I don't want to make up a number, but it has increased in size dramatically. And it seems that as soon as someone comes in, they're given a handbook with a bunch of knowledge, and a lot of it isn't true. One is the 5711 is the greatest watch ever. 2, you need a stainless steel sports watch. 3, quartz watches are bad. Mechanical watches are good. If you say that enough times, it sounds smart, and it's like an in-house is the best of all, so I just wanted to, kind of dispel one of those, just not one of those, just not true, but widely held sentiments in this industry. Next, TikTok. This is something we just talked about before. TikTok is actually good for the hobby. Now, just to be fair and well balanced, I will present both sides of the argument. TikTok as a medium is very instant gratification. I think it dumbs us all down as consumers. I really do think that is true. That being said, it's not to say that the medium can't be used to educate, because it absolutely can be. But generally speaking, the people that have been in the watch industry for a while have come to resent TikTok as a platform because it's basically led to a real mass influx of people into this industry, right? Buyers. And in turn, prices have really gone up to a point that is kind of upsetting, right? Things that we've been watching for a while became unaffordable pretty much overnight, all because of TikTok influencers. And they're not as fluent in watch history, and they're not as, invested in the craft. That being said, to be fair, I do think that while imperfect, it is good. It is good that more people are into this hobby. It means that there are more people we can talk to about it. It means that the brands have a bigger incentive to produce interesting watches, right? Yes, on the vintage market, it sucks because these people have bought up these newbies that don't know anything. I'm being cheeky, have really, led to just wild inflation, right? That's just true. But on the other side of it, it gives you more people to talk about watches with, and it gives the brands more of a reason to invest in their catalogs. And that's something that we've absolutely seen from all the brands. I think that brands are putting a lot more effort into their watches in the last couple of years. And I don't just think it's because of historical publications. They're a big reason as well, of course. Legacy journalism, if you want to call it that, in watches or dinky is certainly important. But to ignore the importance and the value of the, for lack of a better word, evangelization through TikTok is just not fair. And it's not like the people that have been flooded into the watch industry through TikTok have bad taste either. In fact, I got to give them a lot more credit than I've got to give a lot of us, because these people, these young people, are very, almost to some degree, needlessly so, and like it's ridiculous sometimes, but they have such a need for personality and independence, which sometimes is even dishonest because it just becomes a competition of who can stand out more, and that's not being true to oneself either. But their taste and what they buy is interesting. They have, looked at watches that everyone had been passing up for many, many years. And while there was a group of people that was always appreciating, those watches, like this watch, for example, is an amazing Rolex Cellini, 18 karat yellow gold with a red vignette dial. This watch 5 years ago or 8 years ago or 10 years ago didn't matter. And yet this influx of young youth, just like young blood into the industry, has made everyone realize, like, no, those funky individualistic watches matter. This watch, by the way, is available for sale in the Theo and Harris Vintage Watch Shop. So go take a look at that shop, our shop, the shop, to shop vintage watches from Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega, Tudor, etc., Cartier, and of course men's and women's. And go ahead and take a look in the strap shop as well for a custom handmade strap. Next, the 5711 sucks. That is my opinion. Now, what does sucks mean? I think that the 5711 is keep in mind, if I were gifted one, it'd be great. If I were offered one at retail, and assuming I wasn't allowed to sell it, I would not buy it. Now, I'm sure many of you out there have 5711. It's a fabulous watch. God bless you. I hope that you have it forever. I hope that you enjoy it. But I am politely going to, hold my opinion that it, one, gets a 0 for originality, right? Which, many watches do. It's essentially just a very close to original production. Of course, it's been discontinued now, but the Nautilus continues to live on, and we'll see essentially the same watch again released in no time, I'm sure. But the watch became the king of all watches. These watches went from, $37,000 or whatever it was, $27,000 to $120,000 during COVID. Now they're still basically between 90 and 100. I think that that's a crazy amount of money. And I think that it's really, to put it simply, it's undue praise. I don't think that watch is anywhere as good as its predecessors. I don't think it's as good as the original 3700. I don't even think it's close. I think it is a very disappointing grandchild in that its proportions its proportions in design do not capture a lot of the original brilliance of the design. The thin profile, how close the dial was to the crystal, is amazing, right? It's a work of art in its original form, and while it's still pretty, it loses the little details that made it so special. It also failed to adopt modern, useful technology, like people point out all the time. Rolex has a more comfortable bracelet in that it has micro adjustment that you could just kind of adjust right there. 5711 ran for quite a while. The fact that we didn't see that was really wild. We got a movement upgrade in like the last year, I believe, but relatively speaking, an unimportant addition to that watch. I think that the 5712, on the other hand, is basically a flawless watch. I think the 5712, I would put right on par with the 3700, the original Nautilus. And I really don't even hesitate to say that. I think that watch is fabulous. So it's not just that I'm, Mr. Scrooge on modern watches. It's not that at all. I just think that it really does on almost every level fall short. And the only thing it does have going for it, I know this is a little bit arrogant, the only thing it has going for it, I think, is what little it does retain of the Genta design language. Now, that's a little harsh, but I really do think it's true. And the last, point here is the Apple Watch never mattered. Now, Apple as a company, I think their bottom line would disagree with me. I believe the Apple Watch has become a wild success for them, and it's been incredibly profitable and on a million different levels. But I was around when the first Apple Watch, when I say around, I mean in the watch industry. It was actually my debut on YouTube about the Apple Watch. And everyone really believed that it was going to, in the same way that the quartz, crisis did really damage mechanical watches. Everyone thought the Apple Watch was going to do the same thing to the watch industry. And literally the opposite happened. I'm not sure if the Apple Watch is responsible for the opposite. I think that COVID is largely responsible. TikTok is responsible. Hodinkee is responsible. I don't think that it's the Apple Watch. But these two things did happen at basically the same time. I mean, it happened in the same, run. I mean, the last 10 years in this industry have been wild. 10 years ago, when I got into watches were still a fairly esoteric thing to be involved in. It was something that you didn't know another guy that liked. Now, everybody likes watches, especially if you live in a metropolitan area. Everybody likes and is, to say fluent is dramatic, but is like really well spoken about watches. Like people know that Gerald Genta designed the Royal Oak. And if they don't know Gerald Genta, they know that it's the same designer of the Nautilus. And it's like, which flavor do you like better? People are aware of Paul Newman's connection to the Daytona. People are aware of watches as a collectible class. 10 years ago, that was, again, not common knowledge. But now people know that people collect really rare production watches. And it's not just like your grandfather's old, whatever, dusty, right, postage stamp kind of collecting people. No, real people collect these things. None of this knowledge was commonplace, was commonly held 10 years ago. And now people know about it. And it's amazing. I don't think it's because of the Apple Watch, but I think it's funny that it happened at the same time. In the same frame of time that everyone thought the Apple Watch was going to kill or really hurt the watch industry, the exact opposite happened. And I'll be honest, I remember, when it happened, when the Apple Watch was released, I remember even I was like, oh, geez, just as soon as I get into watches, it's over. That really stinks, but that's just not what happened. In fact, 10 years later or something like that, I mean, wearing an Apple Watch as a, professional, again, barring, certain spaces, right? But generally speaking, in metropolitan New York, men wearing Apple Watches, that's not it. That level of adoption of technology is not generally looked at as cool, right? It's just not. Being super plugged in on every other place is cool. But the wrist has been validated as prime real estate for a hobby. It just has, by men and women. I think it's even more in men, and I think it's growing in women, for sure. Keep in mind, I think that Gen Z is allocating more of their personal resources to watches than any other generation before it. Meanwhile, Gen Z is addicted to their phones. They are addicted to technology. And yet that's happening. It's bizarre. So anyway, those are a couple of my unpopular opinions and insights about the watch industry. If you liked this video, please subscribe to our channel and head on over to the Theo and Harris Watch Shop to not buy an Apple Watch, but rather a vintage, mechanical, luxury, often precious metal watch from Rolex, Patek, Cartier, Tudor, etc. Head on over.
Watches, particularly vintage watches, represent this intersection of history, of design, of engineering. Theo and Harris is a family business. It always has been. And that's because we, my family, all share a passion for this remarkable intersection. For nearly a decade now, we have scoured the world from Oklahoma to Tokyo for some of the most interesting watches by some of the world's most revered manufacturers to share with our community. We handpick our collection. We look for quality and we look for taste. We choose watches that, for one reason or another, speak to us. We authenticate them, we service them so they're ready for decades of memories to come, and then we share them here with you. We support our clients. We believe in expedited and fully insured shipping so they never have to wait. We believe in stress-free returns in the off chance they change their mind. We believe in building relationships that last. Theo & Harris is a family business. And we haven't just built a shop, we've built a community. So whether you're considering adding a vintage watch to your collection, a handmade strap to your life, or if you're just looking to talk watches, we're grateful that you've chosen us.